We are clearly seeing a major shift within the US crypto market, and this is actually very exciting to see. However, we're also starting to see some big obstacles being put in our way as well. That's kind of slowing down progress, which I'm going to be talking about. But the big news is that the XRP SEC case is now behind us. And mainly it's, the last step of this was actually the Ripple versus SEC side, because we know that XRP back in 2023 did get cleared, but now the case is officially, pretty much done. We're going to talk about that. We're going to address it. So let's actually dive on into the first big, announcement that I actually want to talk about, which is from Brian Armstrong. So co-founder and CEO at Coinbase, we have great progress on US crypto legislation this week and more to come next week. Market structure draft legislation introduced plus discussed. Bipartisan work continues to bring stablecoin legislation to the floor, likely voting again early next week. Stand with Crypto Day happening 5/14 next week with 60 plus crypto founders coming to DC. Advocates will keep beating this drum. One thing is clear. Both sides care deeply about getting clear rules for crypto and getting it right. Both sides are leading and engaging after years of being sidelined. Crypto isn't just at the table, it's at the top of the agenda. And yes, this is actually a very, very big shift around the momentum with crypto. We are obviously seeing the spotlight put on crypto in a big way. We still need to see some more work done though, because we're starting to see more delays and we're starting to see progress kind of get, halted a little bit here. And that's a big problem. And if you guys don't know, well, here we have the big update, and this is the Genius Act. So we have just in, the Genius Act failed to pass Senate. If passed, the bill would have been the first ever regulatory framework for stablecoins in the United States. Now, I do think that this is actually kind of following the timeline prior, which was we'll have this, done by August. I don't think that this really matters. I think that the timeline is August. So although, yes, it did fail and it got delayed, I don't think that's anything to be concerned about. We will have stablecoin legislation passed in the US. We know that this is going to be a big focus, not just from, the regulators, but also from the full-on presidential admin. Scott Bessent, even Trump has been talking about, stablecoins. I mean, Trump already has his own stablecoin, which is crazy, but, stablecoins are only becoming more and more crucial for the US to utilize as not just a financial weapon, but also a backing for the dollar. So when we think about this, I think that this is just one, speed bump in the road that we'll get past, and then we'll start going back into, overdrive mode. So although this didn't pass, like I said, nothing to be concerned about. Over here, we actually did get an update from Senate Republicans. Chuck Schumer and Senate Democrats just blocked the Genius Act. This historic bipartisan bill would strengthen the US dollar. Like I said, the focus is on the US dollar and what these stablecoins do for it, and provide more financial freedom for Americans. Democrats would rather play politics than do what's right for America. And we also got an update. Sorry, that was the wrong one. I thought that I had it open, but let me grab it real quick. 1 second. Here you guys have it. Sorry, this was the other post I did want to include, which was from the banking GOP. We have the Genius Act is the result of months of negotiations with stakeholders, experts, and members of both parties. Passed banking GOP with 5 Democrats supporting, protects consumers and bolsters national security. Today's vote wasn't about policy, it was about politics. And this video kind of clarifies exactly how important this this overall act actually is, because it's not just supporting stablecoins, it's supporting the US dollar and the US financial position in terms of becoming a leader, not just around our current financial system, but around the digital financial system. Check it out.
The Genius Act was a bipartisan achievement at the Banking Committee. It was a bipartisan achievement because we took the time, hours upon hours. You were there, Mr. President. We debated day in and day out for weeks and months before we ever had the hearing. We offered almost 80 amendments during this session at the Banking Committee. We voted on 40 amendments in the Banking Committee. We made the decision to make America's economy safer and cheaper for the American people. But when the lights came on and the cameras were watching, what did we see? We saw those same Democrat colleagues who recognized the urgent need to bring stablecoins into the clear, responsible regulatory framework. We watched them take a step back and vote against the very bill they voted for. The bill they shaped. What changed? What changed? What changed, Mr. President? Not the substance. They got more of what they wanted in the last 5 iterations of the legislation. What changed, Mr. President, was politics, not policy, not the legislation, not the substance, politics.
So there you guys have it. Yeah, I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I don't understand why this did not just get passed through. It is kind of ridiculous, but like I said, I suspect that this is going to get passed towards the end of the summer. Really kind of aligns with the original timeline that, not only Trump has put out, but also we also heard from David Sachs on this, Scott Bessent. So, by the end of the summer, we should have stablecoin legislation, which should open up the stablecoin market in the US. Now, on top of that, let's talk about the big one, which is the fact that the SEC Gov has announced a settlement with Ripple, Brad Garlinghouse, and Chris Larson. The parties have agreed that Ripple will pay $50 million of the original $125 million penalty, with the rest being returned to them. Both sides will drop appeals if the court agrees to lift the injunction placed on Ripple, which is it's definitely something to look forward to if we get this fully passed out towards the end of the month, which I suspect will pretty much be fully updated by the end of the month. And even over here, we do have from James K. Fallon, SEC versus Ripple XRP breaking. The SEC Gov has filed the settlement agreement letter. He said the next steps. This is the next steps that we're looking at. So Judge Torres needs to provide an indicative ruling as to whether the court would, 1, dissolve the injunction and release the escrow with $50 million going to the SEC and balance back to Ripple. 2, if Judge Torres provides the indicative ruling, the SEC and Ripple will ask the Second Circuit for a limited remand back to Judge Torres to ask for the relief described above. 3, upon the granting of the remand, the SEC and Ripple will file a motion with Judge Torres asking for the relief described above. 4, after the injunction is dissolved and the funds distributed, the SEC and Ripple will ask the Court of Appeals to dismiss the SEC's appeal and Ripple's cross appeal. Then it will be over. So right now, okay, let's just be honest. This case is over. All right, it's over. But the problem here is that the overall side of the legality process is not over. We still have to go through all of this nonsense. But the thing is that none of this is actually holding up any significant deals that Ripple would be making with institutional players or partnerships or even expansions within the US. At this point, I don't think anyone is really kind of worried about this case. I think that this announcement itself is a very big signal that this case is essentially finished. Now, we also got an update from Fred Rispoli because, again, I'm more so looking at the lawyers, the law side of things, and going off of what they're telling us because I'm not a lawyer. I do not practice law. So when we look at this, we have, what's so great about this on the settlement agreement attached, 0 appearance by a certain Mr. Tenrero. I hope that I'm saying that guy's name correctly. I know that we heard from him in the past. In all fairness to him, though, he has been dealing with a massive temperature regulation problem in the IT room. You can't just walk away from that. So yeah, listen, this is definitely something that we're really kind of looking at around these additional lawyers that were a part of the process or, big names that were part of the process. The fact that this case is, at this stage now, I don't think that we have to wait too much longer for this all to be processed out. Even Johnny Deaton did say it would be absolutely shocking for Judge Torres to not agree to lift the injunction under these circumstances. I don't want to jinx anything, but the below agreement makes perfect sense, and it's difficult to see it not going through. And yeah, I don't see any hiccups here. I think that this is probably going to get fully passed through probably over the next couple weeks. By the end of the month, we should have this completely resolved. So definitely looking forward to this. And on top of that, to really kind of look back at the Genius Act combined with this update from the SEC, we focus on what Smoke Dog recently posted on X, which was the Ripple settlement is in. Now eyes are on the stablecoin bill. A potential settlement aligned with the Genius Act's stablecoin framework could accelerate XRP's reintegration into the US financial markets, potentially supporting its price and attracting institutional investors. And yes, this is exactly what I'm actually kind of focused on, because if we look at this document, we could see a potential settlement aligned with the Genius Act's stablecoin framework would or could accelerate XRP's reintegration into the US financial markets, potentially supporting its price and attracting institutional investors. And I do think that's exactly what we're really kind of looking at right now, is not so much the Ripple settlement. I don't think that we even care about this at this point, because this case is basically over. We heard from Brad Garlinghouse himself. We heard from Stuart Alderati. And, I think that this case is done. It's wrapped up. And the main thing that we're actually looking at is the Genius Act. We are waiting for this to actually get fully passed through. We will most likely see this get voted on again next week. We'll have to wait and see what happens with that. But if this bill gets fully passed through, and we see this case completely wrapped up in the month of May, you better watch out, because we go back to 2023. Remember that Ripple stated that US banks will want to use XRP after a partial victory in the SEC fight. This was just back in 2023. Imagine what US banks will want to do now that the case is completely finished and that there's a full-on victory in this case. I don't think that we have to talk about what I've stated many times over in the past from Bank of America, for an example. We go back to 2022, Bank of America to partner with Ripple for on-demand liquidity services after the XRP lawsuit finishes. This was a full-on report regarding that, okay? And this is actually with Brad Garlinghouse. We have Brad Garlinghouse made it very clear that they're ready to settle with the SEC as long as they can get clarity on XRP. I asked him if American companies were waiting on the sidelines to jump in the game once clarity happens. He said absolutely. He specifically said Bank of America is a huge partner of Ripple, and said that Bank of America stands to gain really big when the settlement happens, because they are going to have a huge competitive advantage over their competitors by using on-demand liquidity on the marketplace. So Brad is very, very bullish. Now, this also aligns perfectly with what Bank of America CEO did say back in January, in the beginning of the year, where they did say that the financial industry itself will jump into crypto payments if regulators allow it. Also, Bank of America wants to launch a stablecoin or even tap into the stablecoin market. So just think about the alignment here, right? We go back to 2023. All right, Ripple says that US banks will want to use XRP after the partial victory. We go back to 2022, where Bank of America was basically ready to tap into XRP once the lawsuit is finished. The lawsuit now is finished in 2025, the same year that Bank of America CEO and even Morgan Stanley CEO said, guess what? We want to tap into crypto for payments if regulators allow it. And we're now starting to see the regulatory side of this entire space waking up to become pro-crypto, pro-innovation. There's just one big obstacle here, and that's the Genius Act. We need this to get fully passed through. I do think that the overall, hiccup here and the progress halt that's been happening here and there, it's all just a game and show. I already think that there's a timeline here behind all of this stuff that's we're kind of right on track with. It kind of goes back to even the original idea of this SEC lawsuit. Like, everyone always stated, like, oh, this lawsuit, it was all by plan. It was to make sure that all of the big players can catch up, and it kind of does feel like that ever since we got the announcement of Trump winning back in November. From that point on, everything just kind of started to align perfectly. And I just feel like it's too, coincidental that everything is just aligned perfectly now. And we're already starting to see all these big, announcements. We're seeing Ripple expand rapidly. Like, think about the institutional investors that are jumping in now and all the institutional players, right? At the same exact time that Ripple has been fully focused on institutions for years and years and years now, and saying that, oh yeah, institutional adoption's coming in 2025, you just cannot, like, you can't look at this and say, oh yeah, no, this was definitely not planned or, aligned perfectly with Ripple. It just feels as if it's all by design. So in my opinion, I think that we get stablecoin legislation by the end of August. I think that We'll probably have this Ripple case all signed up and put behind us and resolved completely by the end of this month. It's basically done. We just have to wait it out, the legality process. But after that, I do think that institutional grade adoption around Ripple and even XRP is going to accelerate in a huge way from all of this. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys did, definitely leave a like, subscribe, set notifications on because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord on the description below. And with that being said, guys, it's been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.